Ja, bei mir zu Gast heute am Telefon ist Pat Angove und mit ihr war ich ja auch zusammen in Afrika. Pat, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Pat Angove wird heute über ihre Bücher vor allem sprechen. Dragon's Talk heißt die Sendung. Und ja, es geht da vor allem um die Erde etc. Pat Angove hatte seit 1994 die Tätigkeit als Lehrerin und Heilerin aufgenommen und hatte 1998 ein sehr starkes Initiationserlebnis und seitdem arbeitet sie für den Planeten Erde und diese Arbeit besteht eben vor allem darin, Menschen und den Planeten selbst im sogenannten Aufstiegsprozess zu unterstützen. Was das alles bedeutet, das werden wir heute rausfinden. Hi Pat, I'll switch to English now. Welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Maybe right at the beginning, I already introduced you as a spiritual healer and a teacher, and but how really did you become the woman you are today?
Oh gosh, it started back in 1990 when I had a breakdown, and I had a breakdown because my business had failed. It was my second failed business. I didn't have very high self-esteem, and this failure in my business, I was failing in my marriage, I was not a very good mother, I felt I was failing in everything, and decided really that there was no point in continuing to live. And talk about synchronicity, but a friend of mine told me to go and see somebody who was a hypnotherapist, and I went along, and the hypnotherapist began to talk not to my unconscious but to my soul, and my soul began to answer her, but they weren't the answers I would give, and I began to believe that I was more than just the flesh and blood that you can see in a mirror. And I began to look into that and went along to some transformational healing workshops where you transform your deep beliefs and faced layer upon layer of my own self-hatred, which was quite a shock to me because I didn't realize that I had layer upon layer of self-hate. But as I did this and faced each layer, I began to love myself more. And as I loved myself more, I began to have less fear, more communication with the beings that like to remind us of that we are spirit. And I accidentally then began to teach it.
On your website, I read that 1998 it was that you had a very strong experience.
That's right.
What happened?
I was in South Africa. I was working in South Africa, but it's also, I feel, my spiritual home. It's a place where I do my healing. And a friend took me up to Table Mountain because, you know, if you're in South Africa and you're in Cape Town, you have to go to Table Mountain. And I went up on Table Mountain and we sat down by overlooking a deep chasm, a deep ridge. And I just sat there, and my friend sat a little way away from me. And I suddenly just felt layers of energy come up from the earth. And as it came up, it was like an electric shock on my body. And it just kept coming and kept coming. And during it, I heard somebody behind me, but I didn't look. By the way, I was also I did not know what was happening. I just allowed it to happen. And at one time, I opened my eyes, and there was a hawk in front of me, flying over the chasm. And it just stopped flying and looked at me straight in the eyes. And I watched it, and I'm thinking, oh, this isn't really happening. This is my imagination. And it just called out and then flew away. And then another layer of energy just came from the earth. And it must have taken, I don't know how long it took, but we both got sunburnt. And I asked my friend afterwards whether he'd seen the hawk, and he hadn't. But he did say that while I was sitting there, 2 black Sangoma, which are healer women, had come and had knelt behind me, and they got up and left just as I began to open my eyes for the last time. When I got up to move, I couldn't move. My legs wouldn't move. I had to hold on to my friend. It was very embarrassing. And then on the way back to there's a chair, there's a cable car that takes you back down. On the way back to the cable car station, I was told to go and sit on a rock, and I went and sat on this rock, and then the same thing happened again for about another, I suppose, 10 minutes. I was sitting there just having this energy come through. And it was a little while after that I was talking to somebody who was asking me about what's happening on the planet, that suddenly the planet came through and began to talk to her. So obviously this was some kind of preparation to prepare my body to allow me to channel the earth herself. And I've never recovered, really. I've always been a bit crazy since then.
Well, yes, I know, because I've been in Africa with you.
Yes, you have first-hand experience.
Yes.
And I was actually on my best behavior then.
Oh, but I still have those photos when you were dancing with Elke.
Oh, right. I see.
Yes,
perhaps
so
I could have a copy.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, just for the listeners who don't know, we were, you also joined us in Africa. Mm-hmm. And we, just a couple of shows, although I think the last show, I don't know, we did a show about our last Africa trip, which was amazing. Yeah. And I experienced some very amazing meditations that you gave, and I also put up a link to the page where I uploaded the MP3s of those meditations, of the intros. Not sure if you've seen them.
I haven't, actually.
Yeah.
No.
And but it was very. I was quite astonished. I wasn't expecting this. But who can expect that?
That's right.
Yeah. So in the this, what I can understand from what you just told me, then this was a very ecstatic experience that kind of electrically or energetically connected you to the planet.
Yes.
Why do you think this happened so dramatically? I mean, for most, does it always happen so dramatically, or is it?
It doesn't always happen so dramatically, and in fact, if you had have been there and you'd have watched me, you'd have thought there was nothing dramatic happening, because I was just sitting there, what looked like in meditation. I wasn't sort of like wriggling around or, in ecstasy or agony. Excuse me. It was only, for me inside, it was quite dramatic. But
yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, obviously on the outside world there was nothing dramatic happening, but for you it was a very intense experience.
Yeah. But then you see, I do tend to have intense experiences because I'm not afraid of my own feelings. And B, most people that have deep healings, it is always dramatic in some way. It's like your experience in Africa. For you, that some of that would have been quite dramatic.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a bad experience, but it certainly, I felt that it was like changing my very cells of my body. You know, changing my DNA in some way. Now, I don't know whether that was true or not, but it just felt like that.
Yeah. Could it be that in this experience, what was happening, whatever it exactly was, I mean, was just compressed in time? So many people go through this experience, but maybe in years, and you just went through it in half an hour. I mean, could that be why it was so intense for you and so?
It could be, Tarek, because that I hadn't thought of that before, but it could be. But I know that people do have quite dramatic connections with Earth. You know, I know of people who, like, their feet would always be cold, and they'd come along to a workshop and we'd do some connecting with Earth, and their feet would start buzzing and never got cold since.
Great, I'll be on the next workshop.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? I could do foot warming workshops.
Why do you think this happened?
I think because most of us are we're not really connected with the planet.
No, what I want.
Oh, why
this happened to you?
Why their feet get warm? Or why did it happen to me?
Coming back to the experience you had in '98,
yes.
Why do you think you had this experience?
I'm actually I'm a spiritual cynic.
That's new. A spiritual cynic. That's great. I like that.
Experience things for myself. Then, you know, I find it hard to believe in the experience unless I feel it for myself. I'm an empath, which means I feel other people's stuff. So why shouldn't I feel Gaia's? Why shouldn't I feel Gaia?
I just talked to some friends today about this show, and I think for many people it is very difficult to comprehend the fact that a planet can have a consciousness, that a planet is a living being. Yeah. What's your take on this? Well,
I think science is already proving that everything that exists has some form of consciousness. You know, I mean, we've got people that talk to plants. And if you talk to your plants, then they seem to grow better. We've had people that have recorded the music and the noise that plants make, that rocks make. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have an actual intelligent consciousness, but they do have some form of consciousness. Now, if you've got a planet that is part of everything that exists in our focus, if you like. I mean, our body is made up of the same structure as the planet. Now, if we've got what we like to think of ourselves as sort of an evolving consciousness, why can't she? We're made of the same stuff. Just because we can't locate her brain, or we don't quite know where her heart is, you know, we are made of the same stuff as the planet. So for me, it's fairly logical.
Well, I think for you the most